Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Talk Musicals to Me, a new theatre podcast about musicals and their impact on people. My name is Caroline Sheen and I'm here to quiz some of the leading creatives in the entertainment industry about their relationship with musical theatre and how certain musicals may have influenced their lives in ways you may not even expect. From how they first encountered a musical to musicals they may never even have seen, let's dive in and introduce today's guest to open up and talk musicals to me. Now, talking musicals to me today is a dear friend of mine and an absolute theatrical legend that some of you may not have heard of, but you will have absolutely seen the influence that his work has had on people in the West End, absolutely, and the British creative scene. His name is GERRY TEBBUTT, and he was the head of musical theatre at Guildford School of Acting. He actually started the same year as me in 1994 and was just the most wonderful teacher and mentor and has become the dearest friend. And before that, he was an artistic director, he was a director, he was a choreographer. And before that, he worked hard in the West End alongside such legends as Angela Lansbury. And honestly, let me tell you this, there's a place in his house that absolutely captivates me. It's a room full of shelves with CDs and albums, every musical you could possibly imagine, even musicals that you couldn't possibly imagine, that you probably never even have heard of. They are all in Jerry's house, and it's one of my favourite rooms in the whole world. Can I please introduce the fabulous GERRY TEBBUTT to talk musicals today?
Caroline, how lovely to speak to you, and thank you so much for inviting me on this terrific podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled to be your guest.
Do you know what, Jerry? When you first messaged me about the podcast and said how much you enjoyed it, that made my day, because I kind of made this podcast for people like you and me who care so much about musical theatre and where it's been and where it's going. And so when you sent me that text, I thought, I'm doing this right. I'm doing the right thing here because Jerry likes this. So I've ticked that box.
Not only do I like it, Caroline, but I introduce it to many, many students. And I say, if you want to learn about musicals and listen to people, listen and learn, then just listen to Talk Musicals to me, because you'll get a lot out of it. And a lot of students come back to me and said, oh, they're fabulous. They're absolutely stunning. I'm listening to all these wonderful people whose names I've heard of, but I had no idea about their backgrounds. So, yeah, it's a great educational podcast as well, Caroline, which is fantastic.
Oh, thank you. That's perfect. That's just exactly what I want it to be doing. And I'm having an absolute blast doing this myself, because I'm getting to have these one-to-one conversations with all these theatrical legends. And now I get to have this conversation with you, because we always have a natter and we have a chat. But I don't think we ever sort of sit like this and really go in on musicals. So I can't wait.
Oh, well, that's very sweet. And I'm delighted, as I say, to be here. So thank you.
Oh, I'm absolutely thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. Shall we start with our first question?
Yeah, let's start. Let's go for it.
So, Jerry, when did you first ever meet a musical? What was the first musical you ever went to see or remember seeing?
Well, I remember it very well, Caroline. I'm going to take you back through a couple of centuries. It was 1955,
Yes.
and it was a sister who is much older than me by 12 years. It was her 21st birthday. And as a 21st birthday present from my mum and dad, they took us up to London to the Adelphi Theatre to see a review. So it wasn't a musical, it was a musical review. The review has long since died a death, sadly, because review was wonderful. But it was a review at the Adelphi, and it was called Such Is Life. And it stars a very famous comedian of the time called Al Reed. But the great thing was, on the same bill in that particular show, which was called Such Is Life, was a young lady making her West End debut, and her name was Shirley Bassey. So Shirley Bassey made her West End debut in Such Is Life at the Adelphi, and I was there when I was 10 years old. The extraordinary thing is that the Adelphi, of course, it was the first time I'd been to a West End theatre, and I was absolutely entranced by it. Of course I was. And little did I know that many years later, I'd be working in that same theatre. I was in a musical there called Irene, and then I also directed a television commercial there for Nescafe. There's a lovely story about that because when I was auditioning dancers, they wanted 30 dancers for this Nescafe audition. So I auditioned all these dancers. They put the advert in the stage like they used to, and there were queues round the block of the Adelphi Theatre. And we used to have them in 20 at a time, and I'd do the choreographed routine, and then I'd say, stay, go, as you do when you're auditioning. And as I was working through the first 20, there was a girl there, and I thought, oh, she's not very good. So I said no to her. And then the next 20 came in, and I went, no, yes, no. And I looked at this person, I thought, I've seen her somewhere before. This happened 4 times. This girl had gone off stage, changed her leotard, put a wig on, and come back in. And she did that 4 times. And eventually, I gave her the job.
Wow, that's tenacity for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's probably what you need today. Just take a different leotard and a wig and be someone else. The 4th time she came out, I know I've seen this girl somewhere before. And then it suddenly dawned on me that it was the same girl.
How fabulous.
In a different costume and a different wig. Yeah. So the Adelphi Theatre, of course, well, I first saw Shirley Bassey, just inspired me to want to see more. And although I was only 10, by the time I got to about 12 or 13 and I was doing what used to happen in those days for young lads to do a paper round early in the morning, I saved up all my money. And because I lived in Willesden, I used to, on a Saturday, I used to go up to Golders Green Hippodrome to see whatever it was that was on. It would be plays, it would be musicals, and see some of the great stars of the time at Golders Green Hippodrome.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how I got sort of started. And I think from that moment on, obviously I was entranced by theatre, but I remember one of the great, great nights of my theatre going history was going to the Palladium in 1963 and seeing Judy Garland and Liza at the London Palladium. And I have to tell you, this was the height of the Beatles, and Judy Garland walked on the stage at the Palladium, and we stood for what seemed like 20 minutes just screaming and applauding this frail woman who then sang her opening number and then said, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Liza Minnelli. And on walked Liza Minnelli at the age of 16.
Wow.
So the Adelphi Theatre started all of that for me.
And when you say it was a review, Gerry,
yeah,
what was a review? Because in my head, I've kind of got, the reviews that I know are sort of starting here, starting now and things. Obviously, it's not that. It's more like a variety show, or is it a music hall? What is it?
Variety is also dead, as we well know. There's not a book to it. There'd be various actors, artists doing their own thing. Sometimes you'd have a political review like Beyond the Fringe, which was a huge success in London many years ago, and various reviews of that sort of ilk where they'd take a subject and just play around with it. There'd be no format.
Yeah.
People would just come on and do something. Maybe with a political review, it would be something that was in the headline news. Of course, remember that Noel Coward also wrote a load of reviews at the Globe Theatre. They used to be the Globe Theatre reviews. I think Maggie Smith was in one many, many, many years ago. But reviews sort of died a death, sadly, and they were fantastic. But yeah, starting here, starting now, and things like that are sort of review-like, but they sometimes have a sort of better theme.
Yeah.
And in a review, you'd probably have a comic. You'd probably have a singer like Bassey making her debut. And also in that review was something that I grew up with, which was the Tiller Girls. The Tiller Girls was a line of dancing girls, a little bit like the Rockettes in New York, that were always, opened the show, ended the first half, opened the second half. And there were 20 Tiller Girls, along with, also in that Such Is Life, was a wonderful actor who was a great, great pantomime dame called Jack Tripp.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
Fantastic people. And I was 10 years old, sitting at the Adelphi Theatre. It was magic, absolutely magic.
And would that have been on for like a few weeks, or was it a long run?
I think Al Reed had already been in a review at that same theatre, and this was a new review that followed the one that he'd just been in because he was such a popular comic of the day.
Yeah, wow, amazing.
Yeah, which was extraordinary.
And so then, Gerry, to my next question, which would be, What was the first musical you were personally involved with?
Well, when I came into the industry, as an actor. Although I could sing and dance, I wanted to be an actor. And so I did something that, of course, nowadays is dismissed, which was weekly rep. You did a different play every week. And off I went to Shanklin and did my weekly rep stint. I did 16 plays in 17 weeks. And that's how it used to be. And that's how I really learned the industry. I remember my very first play, I was 20. I looked 12, playing a 45-year-old detective constable in a play called Kill Two Birds. And I'll never forget, Caroline, the first lines I had on the professional stage should have been, he's up in the library, Miss Webster. And the first night came and I said, he's up, Miss Webster, in the library. That was my introduction as an actor in rep. But the great thing was, the following year, I auditioned for a new musical and I got into it. And the musical was called Strike a Light. And it was a musical about the Match Girl. The Match Girl is also a musical. And they both opened in London the very same year with the same subject. The Match Girl subject was the girls that worked in the match factory used to get, because of the phosphorus in the matches, they used to get a disease called phossy jaw, and made their jaws just drop a little bit. And so they had this disease called phossy jaw. And Strike a Light was about the match girls and this particular disease and how they fought it by going on strike. I thought it was a terrific musical. We toured, first of all, around the country, including playing, I often go to Glasgow, but including playing the Alhambra Theatre Glasgow, long since gone. One of the most beautiful theatres that you could wish to go to. And every time I go to Glasgow and I'm in a taxi going somewhere, I always say to the taxi driver, "Do you remember the Alhambra?" "Oh, yeah, what a fantastic theatre." But long since gone. However, we eventually opened the show at the Piccadilly Theatre in London, had a great score. The stars were a wonderful woman called Jeannie Carson. Jeannie Carson was a young lass from Pudsey in Yorkshire, and she did quite a few musicals in London. Then she went to America and she did a television programme that I was brought up on called Hey Jeannie. Then they brought her to London to play the lead in Strike a Light. And it was wonderful working with Jeannie Carson. But also in that show was someone that my mum and dad used to talk about and rave about, was a wonderful British actress called Evelyn Leigh. And Evelyn Leigh was known as Boo in the business. Boo Leigh. I remember when we first met her and she said to us, "You may call me Boo." And it was like getting a knighthood. It really was. And enough, Boulay is where Patti Boulay takes her name from.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Boulay was such a huge star in the West End, and everyone used to know her as Boulay, not necessarily Evelyn Leigh, but Boulay is in that, yeah.
Why does Evelyn Boulay, why does she make me think of Jessie Matthews? Was she related to Jessie Matthews, or did she play?
That's a very good question, Caroline. I know this for a fact because, I also worked with Jessie Matthews. And what happened in the 1920s, Evelyn Leigh was married to a wonderful comic called Sonny Hale, and they were a lovely married couple. But Jessie Matthews ran off with Evelyn Leigh's husband, Sonny Hale, and there was a huge scandal about it. And Noel Coward had written a musical for Evelyn Leigh, for Boulay, called Bittersweet, and she refused to star in it in London because of this scandal that was going on with Jessie Matthews and her husband, Sonny Hale. But eventually, he persuaded Evelyn Leigh to do Bittersweet in New York, and she flew up to New York and she starred in this musical Bittersweet, which is one of Coward's great musicals. And on the opening night, outside the theatre, in the electric lights, the signage outside the theatre said, "Noel Coward's Bittersweet, starring Evelyn Leigh." She was such a huge success in that show that the following night they had to rearrange the electric lights outside, and it said Evelyn Leigh in Noel Coward's Bittersweet.
I love that story. That's fabulous.
True story, yeah. And
wow,
she was wonderful. And it was very, I suppose, old-fashioned now, but her arriving at the theatre in her, obviously, a chauffeur-driven car, Evelyn Leigh would arrive at the theatre looking as though she'd just stepped off the front page of Vogue, and she would leave the theatre looking exactly the same because of her fan base. And there would be fans at the stage door every night, and she would leave looking like a queen.
I I've seen that a few times. I've been in shows sometimes where there have been sort of celebrities in them, and there's always paparazzi at stage door. And I come out of stage door, and sometimes they take photos of me, and I'm literally like, no makeup on, hair scraped back, looking absolutely rotten. And I'm like, you really do not want this photograph. You want, Amber Davis, who's behind me, or, Sarah Jessica Parker. You don't want me. It's hard work to get all that dolled up before and after.
For her and lots of other ladies of that sort of ilk, leaving the theatre had production values of its own. But it was wonderful, working with someone of that ilk. Long, like Leslie Matthews, long since forgotten. In fact, my mother was brought up and born in Soho in London. And my mum used to go to dance classes. And at the same dance classes she took with Leslie Matthews.
Wow.
Leslie Matthews was brought up in Berwick Street, Berwick Street Market in Soho.
Yeah.
And of course, Leslie Matthews became one of Britain's top film stars before the Second World War. Yeah.
It's amazing to think of people living in Soho. I don't feel as many people actually live there now. Although I know there's like a little primary school there, and apparently all the Soho Christmas lights are designed by the kids from the primary school. It's really cute.
Well, my mother went to school there in Peter Street, which is just up there behind what used to be the Windmill Theatre, where the playground was actually on the roof of the building.
Huh?
Literally on the roof, yeah.
So Strike a Light and The Match Girls, they happened in the same season.
Same year.
Isn't that incredible? The same story inspired two musicals at the same time.
Absolutely extraordinary, isn't it?
Was one of them a David Henniker?
No.
No.
Match Girls was at the Globe Theatre and Strike a Light was at the Piccadilly Theatre. Bill Owen had something. If you remember, Bill Owen had something to do with the Match Girls. Yeah.
I will find out that information and let everyone know. And who wrote Strike a Light then? Who were the creatives on that?
From Leeds, Adcock, Joyce Adcock, and the man called Mr. Carey. But what they did, apparently it worked. They brought in Ross Taylor, who was a really well-known choreographer at the time, and Ross Taylor redirected it and rethought the process. And then other people wrote a little bit of music here and a little bit of music there, just to add to it. But what they ended up with, I thought, was a terrific show. And it had Evelyn Leigh and Jeannie Carson. There was a lovely British film actor called John Fraser who was in it. Charles West, who I later worked with in Annie many years later at the Victoria Palace, was in it. Josephine Blake, who was one of our great leading stars of musical theatre, was in it. Yeah, so it was quite a cast. But as I say, that was 1966. I'd only been in the industry a year, and suddenly musical theatre became my life.
Yeah, and with all those huge names as well, that must have been quite a great experience for you. My next question, Gerry, is what on earth was that noise? Which musical have you seen the most frequently?
Well, as you know, Caroline, I am a total anorak when it comes to musical theatre, and I will go back time and time again. I've seen many musicals, more than once, but I remember being in America, in New York, and I saw this musical called Ragtime, and I was just blown away by Ragtime. I went back, and in fact, while I was there, I saw it 4 times. And I know you're going to ask me, what is it that makes a great musical?
That's coming in the second half.
All right, but I remember sitting in the theatre and this little lad walked onto the stage and said, in 1902, father built a house at the crest of the Broadway Avenue Hill in New Rochelle, New York, and it seemed for some years thereafter that all the family's days, and I was completely entranced. That did it for me. I thought the musical was fantastic. I was with my wife, Jill, and I got to the end of the first act, and we both went out into the street during the interval, and we were both just crying our eyes out. And I said, this cannot get any better. And it did. We actually, while we were there, we booked immediately. It was a matinee the first time we saw it. We booked for that evening. And then we saw it 4 times. But I'm seeing, obviously, Audra McDonald was in it, and Brian Stokes Mitchell, and others come close to seeing that. I mean, I am such I suppose people would say old-fashioned. I mean, I love Rodgers and Hammerstein and Irving Berlin and Cohen and all those great composers. And I remember seeing Hamilton the first time, and I thought, oh my God, it's a rap musical. I didn't know what a rap musical is, but I'll have to see it because I know someone in the cast. I think that someone in the cast might have been your husband, Mike Clipson. I suppose we better go and see this rap musical, whatever a rap musical. It won't be like Rodgers and Hammerstein, that's for sure. But anyway, we went to see it, and I remember sitting in the audience at the Victoria Palace. And there was an atmosphere in the audience that I don't think I'd ever experienced before. There was an eagerness, there was a hunger for the audience to see this show. And I have to say, the curtain went up, and I was completely entranced by I thought, for me, it's one of my favorite musicals. I've seen that 4 times now. Going back, I think the storytelling, the rapping is. I'm a rap fan now, Caroline. I have to tell
I
you.
love that.
I know I love Rodgers and Hammerstein, but I also like rap. I think it's a magical piece of theatre. I think, not only the wonderful storytelling that you get, but the actual staging. And every time I go and see it, as I say, I've seen it 4 times, I see something new. I see something that I haven't seen before. There is so much to look at. It is just fantastic. So, yeah, I've seen Ragtime 4 times, the Hamilton certainly 4 times. Others like West Side Story, which I will always go and see. Some of the great musicals I will always go and see. So, more than one.
Do you think with Ragtime, obviously you saw that original Broadway production, if you saw a different production of it, would it still have the same effect on you? Or do you think it was that combination of the collaboration of that creative team and
Surprisingly, Caroline, they did it in London. It wasn't a success. When it was done in New York, they did it at the Ford Theatre, which is another little, and it was a fantastic big theatre with most fantastic scenery and set design and costume design. And it was lacking when it was in London. It was lacking all of that. And of course, it's a very American story, so maybe, but then so is Hamilton. I also went to see it in Cardiff, believe it or not, because they did a concert version of Ragtime in Cardiff at St David's Hall. Am I right? No.
that's the one? Yeah.
I remember raving to students, oh, you've got to see this. It's a concert version. And so we booked a coach, and I took about 25 students down to Cardiff to see the Ragtime in concert. And they actually loved it. They loved it. But I don't think it's ever had the power that it had in that original Broadway version, although I see it's been revived in America at the moment, and I'd love to see it again.
You're going to get your plane tickets booked.
Oh, yeah, except, I don't know, going to America at the moment with the state that it's in with that bloody man. But anyway, I won't go there. Love to see a revival of Ragtime.
I did hear this week they're doing a recording of it, so you'll be able to at least listen to it.
Well, that'll go up on one of my shelves, no doubt.
On one of those fabulous shelves. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So, Jerry, this is my next question. Possibly Ragtime maybe made you cry the most? Because my next question is, which musical made you laugh the most? Which musical made you cry the most?
Well, laugh the most. I look back really hard, and you come out of the theatre sometimes on a high, either a high of being sad or a high of being happy. And I think the biggest high for being happy when I came out of the theatre was the producers, the original producers. I can't wait to go and see the new version of it at the Garrick Theatre, which I intend doing very, very soon. But I love the producers, and possibly because of the theatricality of it as well. Musically, fantastic, Mel Brooks, and it had a book by Thomas Meehan, who I got to know much later on because he also wrote the book for Annie, the musical, that I was in for 3.5 years. But I think the producers was the one that made me laugh the most.
I love the producers because I think it makes you laugh a lot, but it also, especially for people like us, because it's about putting on a show and it's theatrical and it's Broadway, it's kind of extra special, isn't it? Because we see so many people we know.
Absolutely.
So which one made you cry the most, Jerry?
Made me cry the most? Well, certainly Ragtime made me cry a lot. And I tell you what else did. Come From Away. There's a wonderful happiness about Come From Away. But the particular night that I went to see it at the Phoenix Theatre, there were a lot of Canadians in the audience. And I have to tell you, the people behind me, the people in front of me and beside of me were weeping at this musical. And of course, I went along with it because I thought it was just fantastic. And of course, there is great moments of happiness in the musical, but it made me cry a huge amount. But then, so does Fiddler on the Roof. That makes me cry.
Fiddler on the Roof was on television this weekend. If it's on, I have to put it on because I have to watch that opening number, because I've said this before, I think it's probably the best crafted opening number of any musical ever written.
Absolutely. I directed it many years ago. I directed it twice, in fact. And the first time I directed it, I played the fiddler. And it was wonderful just hearing that opening number. The whole thing, it has moments of happiness, but there's a lot of sadness in there. Yes, I noticed the film was on the weekend and I watched it, and wasn't it wonderful? Just wonderful.
Oh, it's a wonderful film of a musical, I think. I don't think I've ever really appreciated it until now with all the musical films happening. You see how difficult it is, get it right. And I think they really got it right with that. And then Come From Away, I love Come From Away. I've seen it a few times. Last time I saw it was on tour. And weirdly, I don't know what it was, whether it was where I was in my life when I was watching it, what day it was, I don't know, or if hormones, but I literally cried throughout the whole thing. I thought, why am I getting getting so moved by this. It wasn't always sadness that I was crying from. It was laughter. It was joy. It was everything. And my child was with me and she was just like mortified. I was just sobbing all the way through it. Yeah, sometimes it can just really catch you unawares, I think.
And I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I love it when you don't expect it, when something surprises you. I think that's really special.
Parade as well. I think Parade is a fantastic moment where there are moments where you just want to burst into tears and say, no, this is horrific. This man didn't do it.
Yeah. Did you see that on Broadway, Jerry?
The only time I've seen it was when they did it at the Donmar.
Fabulous production.
It was terrific. And I did do a production at the Guildford School of Acting many years ago. And it was wonderful working on it. And also, as a director, you research the subject. And I read all those books on the man, which was unbelievable.
Yeah, incredible, incredible. So my next question, Jerry, I don't know if there's even an answer to this for you.
There is.
Is there a musical out there that you haven't seen that you regret not seeing?
Yes.
Oh, there is.
Oh, yes. Because it's never been done here in England. And also it was a flop in New York. I have a huge collection of vinyl, long playing records, if you know what that is, Caroline.
I do.
And there's one that I will play time and time and time again, probably very little known to a lot of people. But it's a musical by a composer called Mark Sandrich, and it was a flop. But Jerry Herman wrote a couple of songs to go into this particular musical, and the musical was called Ben Franklin in Paris. And I think it's got one of the most wonderful scores. It's got some fantastic music, certainly for female voices, like Look for Small Pleasures and When I Dance with the Person I Love. And it stars Robert Preston, who was also one of my favorite actors. Certainly first came across him when he did the film of The Music Man. The last number is Half the Battle, is just wonderful. It makes me cry. I played it only, funnily enough, about 2 weeks ago. I thought, I need to listen to Ben Franklin again. And I sat down and listened to it. Why haven't I seen this show? I'd love to see this show. Of course, it was a flop. It won't get revived. It won't be redone. But the music is fantastic. So,
oh, wow.
Have a listen to Ben Franklin in Paris. It is stunning. Absolutely stunning.
I will be Googling that later on. That sounds fabulous.
Yeah. And the other one is, I'm an avid reader. And one of my favorite books is The Count of Monte Cristo. I read it on holiday every year. And it was done as a musical by Frank Wildhorn. But it never opened on Broadway. It was done in Germany. It was done in China or somewhere like that. And I've got the CD of it, of course. And I love it. And I think fantastic. It is one of my favorite books. And I'd love to see a version of The Count of Monte Cristo. But I sort of feel Schoenberg should be writing it, the Les Mis people should be writing it, because I think they'd make a wonderful, wonderful musical out of The Count of Monte Cristo.
Write them a letter. Tell them to do it, Jerry.
Kublai Schoenberg should certainly write a version of The Count of Monte Cristo. It's up there, story-wise, it's up there with Les Miserables, which I also love.
Yeah. Oh, fabulous. You're giving me things I need to go and research and read now. This is good. This is why I do this podcast. It enhances my life and my knowledge.
Certainly have a look at Ben Franklin in Paris. And if you get a chance, The Count of Monte Cristo by Frank Wildhorn.
Now, speaking of presidents, just before we go to the interval, I must recommend a TV show that I think you know that I'm slightly obsessed with, the musical Assassins.
Oh, yeah.
And there is a 4-part limited series on Netflix right now called Death by Lightning. It's about the assassination and the circumstances around ends with the assassination of James Garfield by Charles Guiteau. Yeah. And it's Matthew McFadden and Michael Shannon playing Garfield and Guiteau. And it is fascinating and fabulous and absolutely brilliant. So have a watch of that if you fancy indulging in more kind of background research to a musical. That's
absolutely one of the great things is that I research to a lot of students is a dirty word. And I have to impress on them that it's not a dirty word. It's part of your business to learn about composers, lyricists, read the story, read the book, research.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking actually when you were saying earlier about when you would spend your money on going to see as much as you could at that Golders Green place. When I was at GSA, the Arno used to do a deal every Monday night for a £5 ticket to go and see whatever was on there. And no matter what was on there, I would go and see it. I would usually be like the only student there, but I saw so many fabulous things and fabulous people and some awful things and some terrible, terrible things. But you learn just as much from them as you do from the good stuff, you know.
When I tell you, Caroline, when I was growing up, when I was 14, 15 and going to Golders Green Hippodrome, sometimes on a Saturday, if I had enough money for my paper round, I would go up to London. I would see a show at 2:30. I'd see a show at 5:30 and I'd see a show at 8 o'clock. So I saw things like How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. All those great musicals. I mean, I was sitting up in the back of the God. I used to pay 2 and 6pence, which was 12.5p for the back of the God. You can't do that now. You know, if you're in the back of the God, you're 90 quid.
You do. You have to pay so much to go see it. What I like to say about that idea, Jerry, is that's the way to live. Go and see every show, every time of day.
Absolutely.
Shall we have a little break? I'm just going to go pour myself a drink and then we'll crack on with this. So, on Talk Musicals to Me, I thought I would use this opportunity to support some friends of mine who have small businesses. And I put a message out on my social media to see who would get in touch and to see how I can help them amplify their voices. So, I have a couple of ones that I would like to mention today. So this one is from my friend John Chartres, who runs a small business specialising in accounting for the arts, self-employed actors, musicians and stage management, as well as small production companies. Friendly advice and good value for anyone who wants to get in touch at fresheyesfinance.co.uk. And this is from a dear mummy pal of mine called Lucy McCrudden, who runs a non-profit called Dance Mama, which is dedicated to supporting parents who dance on and off stage. With evidence-based information and support, plus over 80+ stories, we help parents continue their careers in dance from a physical, mental, creative and logistical viewpoint. Check out www.dancemama.org to see how they can help you navigate your career as a parent. And finally, Jessica runs something that sounds like great fun, a thing called Showtime Circus, which can be found at Showtime_circus on Instagram. It's a circus school franchise and helps other small business owners franchise or license their business. It's based in Birmingham, but I think there's lots of them around the country. So get online and have a look if you want to learn some circus skills. So welcome back to the second part of Talk Musicals to Me. And today, talking musicals with me is my dearest head of musical theatre from Guildford School of Acting, GERRY TEBBUTT. Jerry, I'm having an absolute blast talking to you. Thank you.
I'm having a blast talking to you as well, Caroline.
So at some point in your career, you decided to step away from performing, from working in theatres, to then go into Guildford School of Acting and teach. What motivated that, Jerry?
Well, I guess I spent about 20 years in West End musicals, which was great. And while I was in Annie at the Victoria Palace, I was invited to choreograph Camelot at the Wolsey Theatre in Ipswich, which I managed to do. And I went down to Ipswich. I was living in Colchester at the time, so it was quite an easy journey. I'd go to Ipswich in the mornings and then get the train to London to do Annie in the evening. And I went to the Wolsey Theatre and I choreographed Camelot. And then Annie closed and I went back to the Wolsey to direct Guys and Dolls. And then they invited me back to direct something else. And ultimately, I became associate director of the theatre. And I was there for 12 years.
Wow.
I counted it up quite recently that while I was at the Wolsey, I had actually directed or produced 80 productions, which is extraordinary, including all sorts of things that I really wanted to do. One of them was the Richard Rodgers musical, 2 by 2.
Oh, wow. Is that about Noah's Ark?
It is indeed, yes, it certainly is. And I did it at the Wolsey, and it got rave reviews. Nothing ever happened to it, but it was wonderful to work on something that's never been really done in this country. And particularly Richard Rodgers and Hammerstein fame. So yes, it was lovely doing things like 2 by 2, and I did all sorts of like Bidder and Booth there. I did My Fair Lady there. I did Camelot, as you say, Hans Andersen, The Sound of Music. I mean, it was the great day of regional theatre, and the Wolsey was wonderful. And it wasn't just piano and drums. we had an 8 or 10-piece orchestra.
Wow. You don't get that in regional theatre now.
Oh, sadly, you don't. And packed houses, and they would run for 3-4 weeks, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. And as I say, I stayed there for 12 years, and then out of the blue, I was asked to apply for the job of head of musical theatre at Guildford School of Acting, which I did, and I got it. So I bought a flat in Guildford, and I thought, well, I'll stay here for a year. I might not like it. And I stayed there until 2011. And then I went back again in 2015, and I left last year because I thought it was time to move on to other things.
Well, I'm very glad you did it because you were an incredibly fabulous person to learn from and to have the experience that you brought into that college because you have done it all, and you know about it all. I think sometimes in drama colleges, you get people who have learnt about it all and learnt how to teach it all, but haven't necessarily experienced it all firsthand, so that you're not really getting the actual substance of it. You're getting the information around it. And I think that's what was so brilliant about having people like you and Tracy Collier and people like that at GSA, because you knew what you were talking about because you lived it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I often see young students, fantastic young students who leave drama schools and their first job is teaching. And you think, oh, I'm not quite sure how you can teach when you haven't actually experienced what it's like out there in the industry. And of course, one understands the industry has changed enormously over the years. You think about every small town had a repertory theatre. That's all gone, sadly. I worry about where young people who hopefully will be breathing new blood into the industry, where they're going to work.
I agree. I'd love to find out more about how it was in rep, but that's not what this podcast is about.
No.
But I think it's fabulous. But my next question is a question that you've actually had to do a lot, and that is, which musical would you put on a school curriculum? But I'm guessing maybe come at this from like an educational standpoint rather than a what would you do in drama school kind of standpoint.
Well, I think obviously it depends on the age of the students, but I always believe that the students should, my old word again, research, and therefore it would need to be a musical that's based on a great classic piece of literature. It's amazing nowadays, of course, and I'm sort of going off subject a little bit, the amount of times that I say to young people, oh, what book are you currently reading? Oh, I'm not reading a book. I don't read books. Because, of course, now they have this thing called an iPhone. And I think that's really sad. So, again, I would go back to making sure that maybe I would do Oliver, but make them read or read with them Oliver Twist, understanding the characters, understanding the storyline, understanding who Dickens was to start with. I might even consider things like The Secret Garden, which is a wonderful book for young people. And the musical version, of course, the Lucy Simon, Marsha Norman musical is fantastic. And somehow piece that all together so that their education has looked at the literature and how people have taken that piece of literature and turned it into a musical. I think that's really exciting.
Literature side of it, isn't there? And like the learning about the text and writing behind it and the people behind it. But then something I know you love just as much as I do, there's the history behind it as well. Reading Dickens, you're learning about Victorian London. You're learning about the workhouses. You're learning about how life was.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you. And that's why I think research anyway. And I still research, Caroline. I'm still researching. I find a book and I get totally involved and want to research and want to know more. But yes, I mean, I think even for some people, Into the Woods is a great one for researching and understanding. It's a complex piece, as well, you certainly know because you did it. But I think worth taking time to understand it, to research and find out exactly what it's about.
Well, it's that, and also it's learning that the fairy tales that you're telling the stories about actually, quite shockingly, aren't what you know from a Disney movie at all. The original Grimm tales and the Hans Christian Andersen tales are gruesome, some of them.
Absolutely. And that's why I think, if you are going to teach that, what should be on the curriculum at schools, is finding stuff that has a really good background, research background, that you can inspire young people with.
Yeah.
Explain, well, as you said, this is how London was, certainly, in that particular period of time.
Yeah, I think that's some great shouts there, Gerry. I think you may have answered this in the first half, but I'm sure there will be more to it as well. Which forgotten musical would you like to see remounted?
That's a difficult one, but I do have an answer. But for me personally, I happen to love the works of Henrik Ibsen, and I particularly like A Doll's House, the play. But, and it's very little known, there is a musical with what happens to Nora at the end of the play, and the musical is called A Doll's Life. And I think it has a fantastic score. It's by Larry Grossman, but Comden and Green, Betty Comden and Adolph Green, the great lyric writers of all time, wrote the lyrics for this particular musical. And it was directed by Hal Prince. And it opened on Broadway. It was tragically, it was a flop. But it's one of those musicals that has a score, again, like Ben Franklin in Paris, which I will play time and time and time again. I think it's got an almost operatic feel to it. But of course, in those days, you had someone called Frank Rich, known as the Butcher of Broadway. And he wrote three legendary Broadway hands, Harold Prince, Betty Comden, and Adolph Green, have inflated a spectacularly uncompromising premise with loads of money, good intentions, and hard work, only to end up with a show that collapses in its prologue and then skids into a toboggan slide from which there is no return.
Oh, he was brutal. Wow.
The show flopped. Of course it did. I mean, Frank the Butcher of Broadway. He could make or break a musical. I remember being in New York one night years ago, and I passed a theatre, and there was Celeste Holm, who I remember from the film High Society. Celeste Holm in the utter glory of Morrissey Hall, and it was opening night. And I thought, well, I won't be able to see it on opening night, but I'm going to see this while I'm here to see Celeste Holm. It closed on its opening night. Because Frank and others, they just destroyed it.
Closing on opening night. Oh, wow.
But that was not a new thing in those days in New York, because the producers knew that they would be losing a lot of money.
Yeah. Did that ever happen in London? Were there things that would close that quickly in London?
Well, there was that musical that Cynthia Enrico did at the London Palladium, wasn't there? And I can't remember.
I Can't Sing.
I Can't Sing.
The X Factor musical. I remember, I don't know if I'm even allowed to put this on a recording, but I do remember hearing, it opened to 5-star reviews, but it didn't sell quickly. So I think maybe they didn't give it a chance to stay open and for word of mouth to spread. Or maybe the other thing that I heard was that because it wasn't selling, they wanted to take it off quickly because it was damaging the brand. I might be talking absolute nonsense, so please don't sue me for this. But apparently the TV people were shocked when they heard they had to give the actors 2 weeks notice. So it actually got a 2-week longer run than it would have, because if they could have, they would have brought it off earlier. I'll probably cut all that from this podcast because I don't know the veracity of any of it.
Say that, because going back to Strike a Light, the first musical I was in, we got our notice. We opened at the Piccadilly Theatre, and a few days later, we got our notice to close in a fortnight's time. But Jeannie Carson took the company out on a tour. We walked through the streets of London protesting against the strike that they were imposing on us. And so the show ran for an extra 2 weeks. So in all, the show actually ran for 4 weeks in the West End.
Oh, wow.
Jeannie Carson fighting for its life.
Gosh, so even with those huge stars in it, that couldn't run?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No, it ran 4 weeks.
Wow.
We went on strike.
That's a musical in itself, isn't it? The musical about the musical.
Yeah.
My next question, Jerry, is there any musical which inspired you to make a strong choice in your life? There is,
Caroline, and it's a musical that I'm very fond of, and you will know a little bit about it because it's called Salad Days.
A little bit about it.
As I seem to remember, you were offered Salad Days almost to the end of your time at GSA, and then something else came up and you took it, so you didn't take Salad Days. It's an almost forgotten musical now, and it probably doesn't work so much now as it used to. I toured in it for a year. I did a national tour of it for a year. But there's a number in it. I like to think that I'm an optimistic person. And this number, which is "We said we wouldn't look back," comes from Salad Days. And the lines are, "If I start looking behind me and begin retracing my track, I'll remind you to remind me we said we wouldn't look back." And I try not to look back on bad time. I love looking back on theatre and all the things that have happened in my life, but I don't look back on bad times. I look forward and become optimistic about the future.
I love that life lesson to keep looking forward and don't dwell on the past.
And it goes on. "And if you should happen to find me with an outlook dreary and black, I remind you to remind me we said we wouldn't look back. And I just love those lyrics. And they've sort of stayed with me all those years.
Isn't it funny? I've always known that song somewhere in the back of my head, but I've never actually thought about the words to it. I've just gone, oh, it's a bit like singing Jingle Bells, isn't it? You just sing the words. But if you actually think about it, that is a great way to look at life.
Quite inspiring words, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, if it wasn't for salad days, there would be a huge gap in the world of musical theatre.
Absolutely.
Because a young kid called Cameron McIntosh wouldn't have gone to see it.
That's right.
And wouldn't have been inspired to become a huge musical theatre producer himself and given us all these incredible shows that he's brought to the world.
Because Salad Days was one of the longest running musicals in the West End at the time.
Wow.
Extraordinary.
People learn, don't they? You go to drama college and you get taught that Oklahoma changed the world of musical theatre. And I think the next one, just because of that, is probably Salad Days, even though it didn't probably change how musicals were written, but it changed the course of musical theatre because of that one boy that went to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right.
Wow. I love things like that. The what ifs. What if he hadn't gone to the theatre that night? Where would we be? So here's the question we preempted a little bit earlier, Gerry. What's the secret to a good musical?
Secret of a good musical, let me think. Well, I think the structure, again, because the literature aspect of any musical is the structure of bringing the book, the music, and the lyrics together as a whole. I think that's really, really important. I think casting the right actors for the roles is equally as important. And here's the thing, Caroline, acting and singing the lyrics and not doing what happens a lot now, does my head in, which is screeching because you can screech at the top of your voice and just making a noise and competing with other people. You know, we've all seen that. Can we have what the lyric is, please?
What you're getting here, ladies and gentlemen, is you're getting my education right there. Gerry is just going, no, it doesn't mean anything. Start again. Make me feel something.
Sing what, I don't know, Lorenz Hart and Richard Rodgers wrote. Sing what Stephen Sondheim wrote. That music he wrote down, it's there. You know, and suddenly you'll get someone coming on and singing, well, I can sing right up there. And that happens and you does my head in. So sing what the composer wrote and let us hear what the words are. That would be good. I sound like a miserable old man, Caroline, don't I? I'm sorry.
No, it's funny. When I go and teach now, I say the exact same things you've just told me. So hopefully it is getting passed on.
I hope so. I do hope so. Yeah, I think so. At least I hope so.
So, Gerry, our final question. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're down to the end of this. Which musical feeds your soul?
Well, there are lots, but I think for me, the one that will always stand out is Carousel, the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, because when it gets to that moment of You'll Never Walk Alone, I just want to cry. It's the most wonderful, passionate song I think ever written for a musical. I love it because it has darkness in it as well with Billy Bigelow and his death. I think it's a wonderful piece of work and I think it really feeds my soul. And if it's on, I will just watch and listen to it a lot. And of course, You'll Never Walk Alone. It's heard time and time and time again. You know, it's an anthem in own right.
I think if you told Liverpool supporters it came from a musical, they'd be like, what? How? What? That, and there's another team, isn't there? It's like I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles. People choose random music. I can't bear the fact that Sweet Caroline is suddenly a England football anthem. I'm like, it doesn't have anything to do with football.
No.
And it makes my life a misery.
Absolutely. I love anthemic songs or anthemic tunes from music. But I think of all of them, You'll Never Walk Alone has to probably top the chart. I mean, Chess has a great in it, and a lot of musicals have great anthems in it, but You'll Never Walk Alone somehow with the lyrics as well.
We were talking earlier, weren't we, about openings to musicals. And we were talking about the Fiddler on the Roof opening, the Carousel opening. That must have been quite groundbreaking for its time as well. I know it came only just after Oklahoma changed the world with its offstage singing, but Carousel was an overture, but the overture had action to it. There was stuff going on the stage, wasn't there?
What a glorious overture that is.
Stunning.
I mean, fantastic.
When it first kicks in and you just know that as soon as that music starts, that the carousel has started going round for the first time. It's just pure joy.
I know this is coming to an end, but my favourite overture will always be Candide.
Oh, I was expecting you to say Gypsy, but I do agree with Candide as well.
Well, I think Gypsy is a fantastic musical anyway because the book is so very strong. But I think Candide is, for me, the best overture ever. And, you often hear it on Classic FM because it's gone into the classic roots now and played by the London Symphony Orchestra and all the other orchestras, yeah.
Do you think because you were in Gypsy, if you weren't in Gypsy, do you think Gypsy would be your favourite overture if you didn't have to have listened to it every single night?
Oh, I think the whole show is just fantastic. I really do. I mean, I was brought up by myself listening to the Ethel Merman recording. And then suddenly, many years later, after listening to that, I found myself in the London production with Lansbury. And I've directed it. I directed it with a great mate of mine called Jenny Logan playing Rose. I think it's probably one of the best books of a musical ever written. The strength of the book is fantastic until you get to that wonderful final moment of, Rose's turn at the very end of the show, which is a phenomenal piece of theatre writing.
Will you tell me, just because I love this story and I think my listeners would enjoy it too, will you tell me what it was like working with Dame Angela Lansbury?
Oh, she was fantastic, I have to say. Again, a little bit like Evelyn Leigh, she would have an appearance when she arrived at the theatre and when she left the theatre. But one of the great things was that she used to take us out as a company. She would book the Ivy or she would book a restaurant and take us all out for an evening every so often. And one of the great evenings was when she decided to leave Gypsy after about 8-9 months, she was replaced by a wonderful American film actress called Dolores Gray, a huge American star, both on Broadway and Hollywood. Angela Lansbury booked the Savoy Hotel and threw the massive party to welcome Dolores Gray back to London because Dolores Gray was the original Annie in London, and Annie Get Your Gun.
Now that is classy, isn't it?
She was a very classy day, I have to say.
Why am I thinking Dolores Gray? Why am I thinking about Follies? Is her name linked to Follies?
Dolores Gray came back to London after she did Gypsy in that production, which was at the Shaftesbury Theatre.
In that one that Cameron tinkered with and added new material to.
That's right.
Oh, fabulous.
That's right.
Wonderful.
I saw that production too, which was fantastic.
Oh.
And here's a story for you, Caroline. I have a dog. Millie is a Cocker Spaniel. I've always had dogs, and I've always named them after famous people. And this time we couldn't think of anyone to name her after. So many years ago, I was a dancer for a lovely actress called Millicent Martin. Millicent Martin was also in that Follies that Dolores Gray was in. And so we called her Millie after Millie Martin. And as I say, it was 1967 when I was one of her dancers. And would you believe that a week after we'd named our dog Millie, who do I get an email from America but Millicent Martin? Isn't that lovely?
Oh, how lovely. And I bet she was thrilled to hear that you'd named your new little puppy after her.
Millie Martin and my wife share the same birthday. And Millie, of course, is in New York, in America now, and does a lot of American television.
Wow. Oh, she's the mum on Frasier, isn't she? She's Daphne's mum in Frasier. Yeah.
She was in the original cast of Side by Sundown with Julia Mackenzie.
Yeah. Oh, she was big British star, wasn't she? Before she went out there. Fabulous. Oh, Gerry, these stories are glorious. So what's life like for you now, Gerry? I know you're not teaching at GSA, but you are still imparting your pearls of wisdom, aren't you?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, I work for a school in Italy.
Ooh.
There's a wonderful school in Bologna called the Bernstein, named after Leonard Bernstein, called the Bernstein School of Musical Theatre. And I regularly go out there and teach Italian students what we've been talking about all morning, really. How to speak the English language, introducing them to plays and musicals and playwrights, American musicals. And that's great fun. Doing a little bit of teaching here and there, which is lovely.
Gorgeous. So you're still keeping your hand in. I can't imagine you ever stop teaching, really, Gerry.
Absolutely not. Still keep going.
Well, can I just say thank you on behalf of everyone that I know from GSA for everything you gave us, really. I go on stage and there are things in my head that I think, oh, I've got to do this because Gerry would have said this. And, you're up there all the time. And I think, you've inspired so many performers out there who are really great. I went to see Les Mis the other day and I think half the cast were from GSA. And it's really exciting to see the reputation of the school, which is partly down to you setting up, well, you didn't set it up, but, creating that reputation and keeping it up while you were there for so long and keeping up the kind of, I think the authenticity, I always got from you, Gerry. I remember it's that thing of being yourself, not trying to be anybody else and knowing that it's all right to have your voice. You don't have to sound like the next person. I feel like GSA made us all unique performers and that came from you.
Absolutely. I think being an individual in this industry is the most important thing. Sell what you have to sell. That's who you are.
Yeah, there you go. Let's leave it on that, Gerry, because you are the most authentic, unique person I know. Thank you so much for joining us and talking musicals with us today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Caroline.
Lots of love.
I really enjoyed that, Caroline. Thank you so much for asking me.
Oh, thank you so much for doing it. Thank you so much for listening today. This has been Talk Musicals to Me for the Bloop Network. My fabulous producer is Aaron Ware, and the music you heard is from the pen of the sublime Tom Self. If you get a moment, please subscribe or follow and rate the podcast by clicking the stars below on the podcast page. It takes about 2 seconds to do, and it will really help the podcast and its future life and would make us massively, eternally, enormously grateful. In the meantime, another huge thanks for tuning in, and please do so again next time to see who will be next up to talk musicals to me.